Welcome back to the Duck Dive. This is where we, take these really critical systems, pull them apart, and try to figure out how the engineering actually works, or sometimes how it doesn't.
Exactly. And today, we're really cracking the code. Literally.
We are. Our topic is cryptography. We're calling it the foundational engineering of trust. I mean, this stuff secures basically everything, right? From your online banking right down to the power grid.
It really does. And our mission today, for you listening, is kind of to demystify it a bit. People think of crypto as this like impenetrable black box of math.
Right. Super complex equations nobody understands.
Yeah, but the thing is, the math itself,
Yeah.
that's mostly solved. The real challenge, the thing that trips people up constantly, and honestly the most critical part, it's how you manage the keys, the secrets.
The key management. That's what we're focusing on. Okay, so before we dive too deep, let's get some basic terms down. Build a vocabulary for this. A message, the actual data you want to send, readable stuff, that's plain text.
Or sometimes called clear text, yeah. Same thing.
And the process of scrambling it up, disguising it.
That's encryption. And what you get out is ciphertext. Unreadable gibberish, hopefully.
Until you reverse it, which is...
Decryption. Turning that ciphertext back into the original plaintext.
Got it. Plain text, encryption, ciphertext, decryption.
Yeah.
And the whole package deal. The algorithm, the keys, everything together.
That's what we call a crypto system. It includes the specific method, the kinds of messages you can send, the scrambled versions, and crucially, the keys.
And understanding these systems, it's not just academic, is it? Especially when we talk about critical infrastructure.
Oh, absolutely not. The stakes are incredibly high. Think about the smart grid. Its reliable function, keeping the lights on, it depends entirely on the communication protocols underneath. And those need to be secure.
And in those industrial worlds, like SCADA systems controlling pipelines or power plants, they often use these really specialized protocols, things like IEC 61850, DNP3, Modbus.
That's right. And those protocols, many were designed, decades ago.
Yeah.
Their main goals were efficiency and reliability, just making sure the signal got through predictably.
Not necessarily security first.
Definitely not security first, not in the way we think about it now.
Yeah.
In operational technology, OT, the absolute priority is keeping things running. Continuous availability, real-time results.
So if adding strong encryption slows down a sensor reading by even a tiny bit.
That could be unacceptable in some contexts. So historically, yes, security often took a backseat to just raw performance and uptime.
But now these systems are connected. They use the internet, they use standard networking alongside their proprietary stuff. So that old trade-off, efficiency over security, that's become a huge risk factor, hasn't it?
Massive. Because the integrity of that whole interconnected system, this huge meta system, as you called it, it relies on layering security, often cryptographic security, on top of protocols that weren't designed for it. Getting that right is a huge engineering challenge.
The engineering has to make up for those older design choices.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's start with the workhorse. The first main type, symmetric ciphers.
Yeah, these are the fast ones, the efficient ones. They handle the bulk of actual data encryption you see out there.
Symmetric algorithms, you hear different names, right? Conventional, secret key, single key.
One-key algorithms, yeah. They all mean the same thing. The definition is actually pretty elegant. The key you use to encrypt, you can figure out the decryption key from it, and vice versa.
And usually it's just the exact same key for both.
In most modern symmetric systems, yes. It's the same identical key to lock and unlock the data.
Which leads straight to the big requirement, the challenge,
The
really.
core challenge. Both sides, sender and receiver, they have to have that same secret key. And they need it before they can start talking securely.
So the whole security of this system boils down to one thing.
Just one thing. Keep that key
Mhm.
secret. If that key leaks, anyone who gets it can read everything encrypted with it. Past messages, future messages, all of it.
Okay, let's talk examples. There's a really famous historical one, kind of the granddaddy of modern encryption, DES.
DES, yeah. The Data Encryption Standard, developed way back in the 1970s by IBM and adopted by the U.S. government.
And it's a classic example of technology just outgrowing its design specs, right? Its key length was only 56 bits.
Just 56 bits, which back in the 70s seemed like a lot. Trying every single one of those 2 to the power of 56 possibilities, that was considered computationally impossible for any attacker.
But computers got faster, a lot faster.
Exponentially faster, especially custom hardware. People started building machines specifically designed just to crack DES by brute force, trying every key.
And by the late 90s.
Groups were demonstrating they could crack a DES key in like a matter of hours. today. Forget about specialized hardware, even just distributed computing efforts can probably break a 56-bit key, well, almost instantly.
So basic DES is completely broken for anything serious now.
Utterly obsolete, and it's a perfect lesson, right? The math of the DES algorithm itself wasn't necessarily flawed in its structure, but the engineering choice of that 56-bit key length, that determined its practical lifespan.
Okay, so if 56 bits was the killer, why do we still sometimes hear about triple DES or 3DS?
3DES. That was the Band-Aid fix, basically. A way to squeeze more life out of the DES algorithm design. You essentially run the data through the DES process 3 times.
Using different keys.
Usually 2 or 3 independent keys. So key 1 encrypts, key 2 decrypts, key 3 encrypts again. Or encrypt with 3 keys. This massively increases the effective key length and makes brute force attacks much, much harder again.
But it sounds slow.
Oh, it's incredibly slow compared to modern algorithms like AES, the Advanced Encryption Standard. But, you know, it worked. It kept things secure for another couple of decades in many systems. It shows the underlying DES algorithm was actually pretty robust structurally.
Okay, so symmetric ciphers. When we talk about them, there's this distinction in how they handle the data, right? Block versus stream.
Yeah, that's important. Block ciphers, like DES and AES, they operate on fixed-size chunks of data, a block. Usually 128 bits for AES, 64 for DES.
And stream ciphers.
They work differently. They generate a stream of pseudo-random bits, the key stream, and typically XOR that stream with the plain text 1 bit or byte at a time. They're often good for things like, you know, streaming media or where data comes in uneven chunks.
But focusing on block ciphers like AES, just using the algorithm isn't enough. There are these modes of operation.
Exactly. How you apply the block cipher to your data is critical. It affects security, performance, everything. A really common classic one is CBC, cipher block chaining.
Cipher block chaining. And the chaining part is key, right? It links the blocks together somehow.
It does. Before you encrypt the current plaintext block, you first XOR it with the previous ciphertext block. Then you encrypt that result.
So each ciphertext block depends on the one before it.
Precisely. That's the chain. And it's good for security because it hides patterns. If you have 2 identical plaintext blocks, say a block of all zeros, they won't encrypt to the same ciphertext block because the input to the cipher is different each time, thanks to that XOR with the previous ciphertext.
Okay, sounds good for hiding patterns, but that dependency, does it create problems?
It creates a big one for performance and flexibility. You can't decrypt block 100 until you've decrypted block 99, and you can't decrypt 99 until you've done 98, and so on, all the way back to the start. It's inherently sequential.
Which, in today's world of massive data sets and parallel processing, that sounds like a bottleneck.
It's a huge bottleneck. Imagine you've got like a massive encrypted backup file, terabytes large, and you just need to restore one small file from the middle. With CBC, you'd potentially have to decrypt everything before it just to get to the part you need.
Yikes. Okay, so what's the alternative that engineers often prefer?
This is where clever engineering comes in, a mode called counter mode, or CTR mode. Sometimes you see related modes like output feedback or OFB mentioned too, but counter mode is really popular.
Counter mode. What makes it so much better for performance?
2 beautiful properties that CBC lacks. It's fully parallelizable, and it has a random access property.
Okay, break those down. Parallelizable.
It means you can encrypt or decrypt multiple blocks at the same time, independently. Counter mode doesn't chain blocks together based on previous ciphertext. Instead, it generates a unique keystream block for each plaintext block.
How does it generate that keystream block?
It takes a unique counter value for each block, like block 1, block 2, block 3, adds a nonce, a unique number used only once for that message, and encrypts that counter nonce combination with the key. The output of that encryption is the keystream block. Then you just XOR the keystream block with your plaintext block.
Ah, so the encryption process itself is used to generate the keystream, but the plaintext and ciphertext don't feed back into subsequent blocks.
Exactly. And since generating the keystream for block 100 only depends on the counter value 100 in the nonce, you can calculate it directly. You don't need block 99's result at all.
So I could fire up, say, 16 processor cores and have each one encrypt or decrypt a different block simultaneously.
Precisely. Massive speed-up potential, especially crucial for high-speed networking, disk encryption, cloud systems, anywhere you have parallel hardware.
And the random access property, that sounds like it solves the restore from backup problem.
It absolutely does. It's the game changer for large data sets. If you have that terabyte encrypted file and you need the data starting at, say, the 500 gigabyte mark, With counter mode, you just calculate the starting block number, figure out the counter value for that specific block, generate its keystream block, and start decrypting right there. No need to process the first 499 gigabytes.
That's a huge practical difference.
Immense. And there's another engineering benefit, too, related to errors, fault tolerance.
Okay, how do they compare if a bit gets flipped during transmission?
This is critical for reliable systems. In counter mode, if one bit of the ciphertext gets corrupted, when you decrypt, it only garbles the corresponding bit in that one block of plaintext. The error is contained.
Because the keystream generation is independent for each block.
Right, but in CBC, because the decryption of the current block depends on the previous ciphertext block, a single bit error in a ciphertext block will completely garble the entire current plaintext block when it's decrypted, and it will flip the corresponding bit in the next plaintext block because that corrupted ciphertext was used as input for the next XOR step.
So the error propagates. One bad bit messes up almost two full blocks of data.
Exactly. Counter mode is much more robust against those kinds of transmission errors. It contains the damage.
Wow. Okay, that really clarifies why engineers choose specific modes. It's not just about raw speed, but parallelization, random access, fault tolerance, real-world engineering trade-offs.
Absolutely. It's all about fitting the crypto to the task and the environment.
All the symmetric stuff, no matter the mode, still comes back to that first problem we mentioned.
The key.
Getting that one single secret key safely to both people who need it before they can even start using AES, CTR, or whatever. How do you share a secret securely when you don't already have a secure way to communicate?
That fundamental bootstrap problem, the key distribution problem, plagued secure communications for centuries. And solving it required a completely different approach to cryptography, a revolutionary idea.
Which brings us neatly to the second major category, asymmetric algorithms, also known as public key algorithms.
Right. And the core idea here is beautifully clever. Instead of one shared secret key, you use two keys, mathematically linked, but different.
A pair of keys, one public, one private.
Exactly. You generate this pair. One key, the public key, you can shout from the rooftops, post it online, put it on business cards, email it to anyone. Doesn't matter who sees it.
But the other key?
The private key. That one you guard ferociously. Keep it absolutely secret, known only to you.
And how do they work together?
They work in inverse pairs. Something encrypted with the public key can only be decrypted by the corresponding private key. And, importantly for signatures, as we'll see later, something encrypted or signed with the private key can be verified or decrypted using the public key.
So this solves the key distribution problem how? I still need to get my message to Bob securely.
Okay, let's walk through it. Imagine a whole community. Alice, Bob, Carol, Dave. Everyone generates their own public-private key pair. They all publish their public keys in some kind of directory, like a digital phone book. Everyone can see everyone else's public key.
Okay, so Alice wants to send a secret message just to Bob. What does she do?
Alice looks up Bob's public key in the directory. She takes her plaintext message, $, and encrypts it using Bob's public key. She sends the resulting ciphertext over any channel, email, carrier pigeon, whatever. It doesn't matter if someone intercepts it.
Why not?
Because only the person holding the corresponding private key, which is only Bob, can decrypt that message. Alice used Bob's public key to lock it. Only Bob's private key can unlock it.
Ah. So they never had to secretly share a key beforehand. Alice just needed Bob's public information. The actual secret exchange is protected by the math linking the keys.
Precisely. The security relies on the mathematical difficulty of figuring out the private key, even if you know the public key. That's the core breakthrough of asymmetric crypto. You can establish secure communication over an insecure channel without a prior secret exchange.
Yeah, that's revolutionary. And what if Alice wants to send the same message to Bob, Carol, and Dave securely? Does she encrypt it 3 times? That sounds slow.
Good point. Asymmetric encryption, like using RSA directly on a large message, is computationally expensive, much slower than symmetric stuff like AES.
So how do we get the best of both worlds? The convenience of public key for setup, but the speed of symmetric for the bulk data.
We use a hybrid approach. This is how most real-world systems like TLS for websites or PGP for email actually work.
Okay, hybrid, how does that work?
Alice first generates a random one-time symmetric key, let's call it $, just for this single message. She encrypts her actual message $, using the fast symmetric algorithm like AES with this key $. Let's call the result AFM.
So she has the bulk message encrypted quickly with a symmetric key. Now, how do Bob, Carol, and Dave get that symmetric key $?
This is where the asymmetric magic comes in. Alice takes the symmetric key dollars and encrypts it separately for each recipient using their respective public keys.
Ah, so she encrypts dollars with Bach's public key, getting EPUB-K. She encrypts with Carol's public key, EPUB-K. And again for Dave, AOK.
Exactly. Then she sends out one package containing the main symmetrically encrypted message EPM, plus these 3 individually encrypted versions of the key dollars.
So Bob receives the package. He sees the big encrypted message blob and the 3 encrypted keys.
He ignores the ones for Carol and Dave. He uses his private key to decrypt his copy, EPOPA, retrieves the symmetric key dollar.
And now that he has dollars, he can use the fast symmetric algorithm to decrypt the main message EPNEM.
Precisely. Carol does the same with her private key on her copy, Dave with his. They all get the same original message, dollar. It's efficient because the slow asymmetric part is only used on the small symmetric key, not the whole message. And it's secure because only the intended recipient can get the symmetric key needed to read the main message.
That's a really elegant architecture. Okay, let's talk about the engines driving this. The most famous asymmetric algorithm has to be RSA.
RSA, Rivest, Shamir, Adelman. Absolutely foundational. Its security comes down to one core mathematical problem, factoring large numbers.
Factoring, like finding the prime factors of a number.
Exactly. RSA starts by secretly picking 2 huge prime numbers, Tabel and Tegal, hundreds, maybe thousands of bits long each.
Okay, secret primes, P and Q.
You multiply them together to get a very large number, $1, P times Q dollar. This number dollar is part of the public key, along with another number called the public exponent, EA-WARC. Anyone can know, not dollars and dollars.
So the public key is basically, what's the private key?
The private key is a corresponding private exponent, dollars. The security of the whole system hinges on keeping data secret. And the critical link is this. If an attacker can somehow factor your public number known dollars back into the original secret primes, pry and cat.
And figure out the private key, D.
Yes. Once they have 10 keys, they can calculate something called Euler's totient function, P1, Q1 and 10. And knowing Vich and Kyler and the public exponent to dollars, it's mathematically straightforward using the extended Euclidean algorithm, which is fast, to calculate the secret private exponent dollars.
So the security of RSA boils down entirely to how hard is it to factor no dollars?
Exactly. And factoring large numbers, especially numbers that are the product of 2 large primes, is believed to be incredibly difficult computationally. The best known algorithm for it is the general number field sieve, or GNFS.
And we choose RSA key sizes like 2048 bits or 3072 bits for no dollars specifically to be way too big for current or foreseeable computers to factor using GNFS in any reasonable amount of time.
That's the idea. We're constantly estimating how powerful computers are getting and how efficient GNFS is, and setting key size recommendations based on that to stay ahead. It's an ongoing arms race.
Now, doing the actual RSA math, especially the decryption part, using that big private exponent dollars, involves some heavy-duty calculations, right? Modular exponentiation.
Oh, yeah. Raising a number to a huge power module, another huge number. That takes significant computation time. Especially as key sizes like null get bigger, the decryption step CD bandit gets slower.
Which could be a problem for busy servers handling lots of secure connections.
It's definitely becoming a bottleneck. But thankfully, there's a really clever mathematical optimization, an engineering trick using pure math to speed up RSA decryption significantly.
And optimization,
Right.
not changing the core security, just making it faster.
Exactly. It uses something called the Chinese remainder theorem, or CRT.
The Chinese remainder theorem, that sounds ancient.
It is. Goes back over 1,000 years. But it's incredibly useful here. Instead of doing the big, slow calculation CD bandit, where dollars is, say, 2048 bits.
You use the secret primes P and Q.
Yes. Since the server knows the secret factors P, A, and Q, each roughly half the size of N, so 124 bits, it can perform the exponentiation twice, but on smaller numbers, once modulo biller and once modulo qubit.
So 2 smaller calculations instead of 1 big one.
Right. And because the computational cost of modular exponentiation grows much faster than linearly with the size of the modulus, doing 2 calculations on numbers half the size turns out to be way faster than 1 calculation on the full-size number.
That much faster.
Roughly 4 times faster. It's a huge performance win. You compute the result mod P, compute it mod Q, and then the CRT gives you a quick way to combine those 2 results back into the final answer mod N. It's pure mathematical elegance applied for a critical engineering speedup.
That's fascinating. Old math saving modern crypto performance. Okay, besides RSA, what's the other big player in asymmetric crypto?
That would be elliptic curve cryptography, or ECC.
ECC. You hear about it more and more. Why the shift?
The main reason is efficiency. ECC provides equivalent levels of security to RSA, but with much, much smaller key sizes.
Smaller keys. How does that work? Is the math different?
Completely different mathematical foundation. RSA relies on the difficulty of factoring. ECC relies on the difficulty of a different problem called the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem, or ECDLP.
Elliptic curve, discrete logarithm problem.
Okay.
What's the curve part?
It's based on the mathematics of points on a specific type of curve, defined by an equation, typically something like $20 by 3,2 plus x plus b2 over a finite field, modulo a prime 2. You define operations like adding points on this curve. The ECDLP is basically, if you know point and a point q, and q was obtained by adding to itself times TPP, find the integer errors.
And that's believed to be really hard computationally.
Extremely hard, yes.
Yeah.
And crucially, it seems to be harder bit for bit than factoring.
Which means?
You need fewer bits for the same level of security. For example, a 256-bit ECC key is generally considered to provide similar security strength to a 3072-bit RSA key.
Wow, 256 bits versus over 3,000. That's a massive difference.
Huge. Smaller keys mean faster key generation, less data to transmit during handshakes, lower computational overhead for signing and verifying, less memory and power consumption.
Which makes ECC ideal for
Mobile devices, embedded systems, smart cards, IoT devices, anything resource-constrained where doing huge RSA calculations would be too slow or drain the battery too quickly. We generally use specific, standardized curves like the NIST P256 curve or curved 25519 that have been well studied for security.
Okay, so ECC gives us efficiency. Now, you mentioned earlier the Diffie-Hellman protocol for key exchange, kind of the foundation for agreeing on a shared secret using asymmetric principles. But you also mentioned a big vulnerability.
Right. The classic Diffie-Hellman key exchange in its basic form is incredibly elegant for allowing Alice and Bob to compute a shared secret without an eavesdropper being able to figure it out just by watching their public exchanges.
But
It's completely vulnerable to an active man-in-the-middle attack if Alice and Bob don't have some way to authenticate each other's public values beforehand.
man in the middle, how does that work? Let's say Mallory is the attacker.
Okay, Alice starts the exchange, sending her public Diffie-Hellman value towards Bob. Mallory intercepts it. Mallory then generates her own Diffie-Hellman value and sends that to Bob, pretending it came from Alice.
So Bob thinks he's talking to Alice, but he's really getting Mallory's value.
Exactly. Bob responds with his public value. Mallory intercepts that, keeps it, and sends her own value back to Alice, pretending it came from Bob.
So Alice thinks she's talking to Bob, but she's talking to Mallory. And Bob thinks he's talking to Alice, but he's talking to Mallory.
Precisely. Now, Mallory computes a shared secret key with Alice, using Alice's public value and Mallory's private value. And she computes a different shared secret key with Bob, using Bob's public value and Mallory's other private value.
So Mallory is sitting in the middle with a separate secure channel to both Alice and Bob.
Yes. Alice encrypts her message with the Alice-Mallory key. Mallory decrypts it, reads it, maybe modifies it, then re-encrypts it with the Mallory-Bob key and sends it on to Bob. Bob decrypts it, thinking it came securely from Alice. Neither Alice nor Bob has any idea Mallory's there.
Yikes. So vanilla Diffie-Hellman needs something extra.
Absolutely. It needs authentication. This is why modern protocols like TLS use ephemeral Diffie-Hellman, DHE or ECDHE, where the temporary Diffie-Hellman keys are signed using long-term keys, like RSA or ECDSA keys, whose public parts are verified via certificates. That signature proves you're talking to the right person.
So you authenticate the exchange itself using digital signatures. Makes sense. And you mentioned a best practice even within the exchange, something about 2 keys.
Yeah, good crypto libraries like libsodium often recommend deriving 2 separate symmetric keys from the single shared secret that Diffie-Hellman produces. One key is used only for encrypting data from Alice to Bob, and the other is used only for encrypting data from Bob to Alice.
Why the separation?
It provides better cryptographic hygiene and resilience against certain types of analytical attacks. Isolating the key usage per direction is just considered a more robust engineering practice.
Okay, so asymmetric keys aren't just for encrypting secrets or agreeing on keys. They're also fundamental for proving who you are and that a message hasn't been tampered with. That's digital signatures, right?
Exactly. Digital signatures use the public-private key pair in the reverse direction compared to encryption for confidentiality.
Reverse direction, how so?
To sign a message, or more commonly a hash of the message, Alice uses her private key. She performs a mathematical operation with her private key on the message hash to produce the signature block.
So the private key creates the signature. How does Bob check it?
Bob receives the original message, the signature, and he needs Alice's public key. He performs a corresponding mathematical verification step using the public key, the message, or its hash, and the signature.
And the result is just yes or no, valid or invalid.
A clear true or false. If the verification calculation using the public key succeeds, it proves two incredibly important things.
Which are?
1. Authenticity. Only the holder of the corresponding private key, presumably Alice, could have created that specific signature for that specific message. It proves origin. 2. Integrity. If even one bit of the message was changed after signing, the verification using the public key will fail. It proves the message hasn't been tampered with.
And often a third property, non-repudiation.
Yes, non-repudiation.
Yeah.
Because only Alice has her private key, she can't later deny having signed that message if the signature verifies correctly with their public key. It provides accountability.
We see different algorithms for this too, right? RSA can do signatures, but there's also DSA, ECDSA.
Right. DSA, digital signature algorithm, and its elliptic curve variant, ECDSA, are specifically designed just for signatures and are widely used. RSA can be used for both encryption and signatures. The underlying principle is the same. Private key signs, public key verifies.
Now, you mentioned something earlier about malleability, being able to tamper with encrypted data. Is that an issue for signatures too?
Generally, no.
Mm-hmm.
Well-designed digital signature schemes are inherently non-malleable. An attacker can't take a valid signature and message and somehow tweak the signature so it becomes valid for a different message. The cryptographic link is too strong.
Okay, so signatures are safe from that. But you said encryption schemes like RSA can be malleable if you're not careful.
Yes. Textbook RSA encryption, just taking the message M and calculating one more implantage N is dangerously malleable. An attacker could potentially modify the ciphertext $60 at dollars such that the cipher decrypts to a related message $$ without ever knowing the private key or the original dollar.
That sounds bad. How do we prevent that? You mentioned padding.
Exactly. To make RSA encryption secure in practice, you absolutely must use a proper padding scheme before encrypting. The modern standard is OAEP, Optimal Asymmetric Encryption Padding.
Optimal asymmetric encryption padding. What does the padding actually do?
OAEP essentially takes the original message and mixes it up with some random data in a carefully structured way before the RSA exponentiation happens. This randomization ensures two things. First, encrypting the same message twice will produce completely different ciphertexts. Second, and crucially, it makes the scheme non-malleable. If an attacker tries to tamper with an OAEP-padded ciphertext, the complex structure gets destroyed, and upon decryption, it won't yield a valid-looking related message. It'll just result in a decryption error or garbage.
So the padding isn't just filler, it's a critical part of the security engineering for RSA encryption.
Absolutely essential. Skipping proper padding is a common and fatal mistake in custom crypto implementations.
Okay, so we have these powerful tools: symmetric crypto for speed, asymmetric for key exchange and signatures. But how do we manage all those public keys? How do I know that the public key I got for Bob really belongs to Bob and not Mallory?
Now we're getting to the real infrastructure needed to make this work at scale. Public key infrastructure, or PKI. And this loops right back to our main theme, robust key management practices.
PKI, that's about certificates, right? Like the padlock in my web browser.
Exactly. PKI is the whole system, the policies, the roles, the software, and crucially, the digital certificates that lets us bind a public key to a specific identity, like a person, a server, an organization, and verify that binding.
How does a certificate do that binding?
A certificate basically says, I, a trusted certificate authority, CA, have verified that the entity named Bob controls the private key corresponding to this public key. The CA then digitally signs the certificate containing Bob's public key and identity info using the CA's own private key.
So my browser or my system needs to trust the CA.
Yes. Your system comes preloaded with the public keys of a set of trusted root CAs. When you receive Bob's certificate, signed by CA TrustyCert, your system uses TrustyCert's public key to verify the signature on Bob's certificate. If it verifies, you can trust that the public key inside really belongs to Bob, or at least to whoever TrustyCert vetted as Bob.
It creates these chains of trust.
Precisely. You have root CAs, intermediate CAs, and finally the entity certificates. It builds a verifiable chain back to a trusted root. This is what underpins secure web browsing, HTTPS TLS, secure email, SMME, PGP, code signing, document signing, almost all digital trust online.
But again, it all comes back to the keys, especially the private keys, the CA's private keys, Bob's private key.
Absolutely. And this is where we see so many failures in the real world. If you remember one thing from this deep dive, make it this. The most robust math, the best protocols, they are all worthless if your key management is weak. It is the single most critical component and, sadly, often the most overlooked.
So what does good key management look like in practice, especially for really sensitive keys like a CA's root key or a server's private key?
The absolute number one rule: prevent direct access to private keys. Design your systems and procedures so that no human, not even a privileged administrator, can just copy or view the raw private key material.
How on earth do you achieve that? If the server needs the key to decrypt data or sign things.
You use specialized hardware security modules, or HSMs.
HSMs, okay, what are they? Like hardened computers?
Sort of. Think of them as highly secure, tamper-resistant cryptographic coprocessors. The private key is either generated inside the HSM or securely injected into it. And crucially, it's designed so the key material can never leave the HSM boundary in plaintext form.
So the crypto operations happen inside the HSM.
Exactly. The server sends a request to the HSM saying, please sign this data using key XYZ, or please decrypt this data using key ABC. The HSM performs the operation internally using the protected private key and sends back only the result, the signature or the decrypted data. The key itself never gets exposed to the potentially vulnerable server operating system or applications.
So even if an attacker completely compromises the server, they still can't steal the private key sitting inside the HSM.
That's the goal. HSMs have physical and logical tamper detection and response mechanisms. It's about creating a hardened perimeter specifically for your most critical secrets. It's defense in depth. Good engineering practice dictates that private keys should live and die within such protected boundaries whenever feasible.
That makes sense for protecting against theft now, but what about the passage of time? Keys can still get compromised eventually, maybe through a flaw discovered later, or even just decommissioning. How do we trust signatures made in the past if the key might be compromised today?
Great question. That brings in another piece of the trust infrastructure: trusted timestamping.
Timestamping. It's like putting a date on it.
A cryptographically secure date and time, yes. Let's say Alice signs an important contract today using her private key. To add long-term validity, she can take the hash of her signed document and send it to a trusted timestamping authority, TSA.
Another trusted third party, like a CA.
Similar role, yeah. The TSA takes the hash Alice sent, adds the current reliable time, and then signs that whole package, hash plus time, with the TSA's own highly protected private key. This creates a timestamp token.
So Alice attaches this timestamp token to her signed document. What does that prove later?
It proves that Alice's specific signature, or at least the hash of the document she signed, definitely existed at the time the TSA issued the timestamp. So even if Alice's private signing key gets compromised, say 6 months from now, anyone can look at the timestamp token from 6 months ago, verify it using the TSA's public key, and know that Alice's signature was valid back then, before the compromise occurred.
It anchors the signature's validity in time relative to the timestamp regardless of future events.
Exactly. It provides evidence against backdating and helps maintain the integrity of signatures over a long term, even when keys inevitably get compromised or retired. It's another layer of robust engineering for digital trust.
This all really hammers home a point we touched on earlier. Real security comes from solid, well-thought-out engineering and implementation, not from keeping the algorithms themselves secret.
Absolutely. The idea of security through obscurity, trying to hide your algorithm, is largely discredited in serious cryptography. We want the algorithms like AES, SHA-2, RSA, ECDSA to be public. We want them scrutinized, analyzed, tested by experts worldwide. That's how we gain confidence in their mathematical strength.
So if the known algorithms are generally strong, where do things typically go wrong in practice? If it's not usually the core math, what is breaking?
It often comes down to failures in the surrounding engineering. And one of the absolute most common and devastating failures is weak random number generation.
Random numbers. We need them for generating keys, for nonces, for padding. Pretty much everywhere in crypto. Why is getting good randomness so hard? Computers are deterministic.
That's exactly the problem. Computers are designed to be predictable. Generating true, unpredictable randomness is difficult. Most systems use pseudo-random number generators, or PRNGs. They take an initial secret value, called a seed, and use an algorithm to produce a long sequence of numbers that look random but are actually completely determined by the seed.
So the security depends entirely on the seed being unpredictable.
Entirely. That seed must be generated from a source of genuine entropy, physical processes like timing variations in interrupts, mouse movements, network packet arrival times, dedicated hardware noise sources. It needs to be truly unpredictable, and the key generated from it needs to be sampled uniformly at random.
Uniformly, meaning every possible key has an equal chance.
Exactly. If your PRNG or your seeding process is flawed, maybe it relies on predictable things like the system clock, or maybe the PRNG algorithm itself has biases or weaknesses, then an attacker might be able to predict the seed or narrow down the possible keys significantly.
And if they can predict the key.
Then the strongest encryption algorithm in the world is useless. They don't need to break AES, they just guess the key, because your random number generator wasn't random enough. We've seen catastrophic real-world breaks because of faulty PRNGs in major software libraries and hardware. It's a fundamental engineering failure at the very start of the process, generating the secret.
Okay, weak randomness is a huge pitfall. What about protecting communications over time? You mentioned forward secrecy earlier. Why is that so important?
Forward secrecy, sometimes called perfect forward secrecy or PFS, is a critical property for communication protocols, especially things like TLS that secure web traffic or secure messaging apps. It protects past communications even if a long-term secret key is compromised in the future.
How does that work? If my server's main private key gets stolen today, how does forward secrecy stop the attacker from reading all my old recorded traffic?
Protocols without forward secrecy often derive the session keys, the temporary symmetric keys used for the actual data encryption, directly from, or in a way that's dependent on, the server's long-term private key. So if an attacker steals that private key and they recorded your past encrypted traffic,
They can go back and calculate all the old session keys and decrypt everything.
exactly, all your past supposedly secure sessions are retroactively compromised. A disaster for privacy and security.
So how does forward secrecy prevent this?
Protocols with forward secrecy, like those using ephemeral Diffie-Hellman, DHE or ECDHE, generate a brand new, temporary, short-lived Diffie-Hellman key pair for every single session. The shared secret session key is derived from these temporary keys.
And these temporary keys are thrown away after the session.
Correct. They are never stored long-term. The server's long-term private key, like its RSA or ECDSA key, is only used to sign the temporary Diffie-Hellman parameters during the handshake, proving its identity. It's not used to derive the session key itself.
So, if the server's long-term signing key is stolen later, an attacker looking at old recorded traffic still can't figure out the temporary keys that were used for those past sessions.
Precisely, because those temporary keys are gone forever. Compromising the long-term key only compromises the ability to impersonate the server going forward. It doesn't compromise the confidentiality of past sessions. That's forward secrecy. It's fundamental resilience engineering.
Resilience, that seems like the right word. Planning for failures, containing the damage. To really grasp the impact of engineering failures, especially when combined with deliberate deception, we have to talk about Stuxnet.
Stuxnet, yes. A landmark event. Targeted the Iranian nuclear facility at Natanz around 2009-2010. Its goal wasn't just espionage, it was physical destruction. Sabotage.
Specifically targeting the centrifuges used for uranium enrichment.
Right. It aimed to subtly damage or destroy those high-speed centrifuges by messing with the industrial controllers, the PLCs, programmable logic controllers that manage their speed. And it was incredibly sophisticated, using multiple zero-day exploits to get onto the air-gapped networks.
But the part that really stands out, from an engineering and trust perspective, was the deception. It wasn't just malicious code, it was malicious code designed to lie.
That was the genius or the diabolical part, depending on your perspective. The attackers understood the process. They knew if the operators in the control room saw alarms going off or wildly fluctuating readings from the centrifuges, they'd hit the emergency stop.
So Stuxnet had to hide its actions. How?
It performed a man-in-the-middle attack inside the control system itself. It targeted the Siemens Step 7 software running on the engineering workstations, the HMIs, human-machine interfaces that the operators looked at.
The screens showing the status of the centrifuges?
Exactly. While Stuxnet was sending malicious commands to the PLCs, telling them to spin the centrifuges dangerously fast or stop and start them erratically to cause stress, it simultaneously intercepted the real data coming back from the PLCs to the control screens.
And replaced it with fake data.
Yes. It fed the operator screens with pre-recorded data streams showing normal, stable, nominal operations. Everything looks fine. Temperature stable, speed's perfect, pressure's okay, all green lights.
So the operators are sitting there looking at their screens thinking everything is running smoothly.
While in the centrifuge hall, machines are literally tearing themselves apart. The system was actively lying to the humans who were supposed to be supervising it.
That's terrifying. And the report said the Iranians initially didn't suspect malware.
Right. They apparently spent months blaming faulty equipment, bad manufacturing, even their own engineers' incompetence. They trusted the data coming from their monitoring systems because why wouldn't they? That trust was weaponized against them.
It's a profound failure of engineering trust boundaries, isn't it? The assumption that the monitoring data accurately reflects physical reality was completely broken.
Absolutely. It showed that you can't just trust the digital representation. You need ways to verify it. You need resilience. You need to understand that the data itself can be a target for manipulation, not just the control commands.
And how does this Stuxnet lesson apply directly to something like the smart grid today?
It's incredibly relevant. The smart grid is this vast, interconnected system of systems. You've got the high-level business IT systems, the core grade operational control systems, SCADA, field devices like smart meters, distribution automation controllers, substation equipment, all interconnected to varying degrees.
And with vastly different levels of security and maturity across those areas.
Exactly. You might have strong security in the central control room, but maybe less so out at a distribution substation or in the advanced metering infrastructure, AMI hidden systems. Stuxnet showed how an attacker, once inside one part of the system, can potentially pivot and manipulate data or control in another part.
So what's the engineering defense against that kind of cross-zone attack or data manipulation?
Strong zone separation and access controls. This is core guidance from standards bodies like NIST and ISA. You need clearly defined security zones, IT, OT, safety systems, field devices, with strictly controlled communication gateways like firewalls or data diodes between them. You need to authenticate and validate data crossing those boundaries. Implement zero trust principles. Don't inherently trust data just because it came from another internal system.
Assume breach, basically. Assume data might be tainted.
You have to. If an operator gets a status reading from a remote substation, the system needs mechanisms to ensure that data is authentic and hasn't been manipulated en route, perhaps cryptographically signed by the source device. You engineer the system, assuming that attacks like Stuxnet, manipulating the perceived reality, are possible, and you build in checks and balances. #outro.
Wow. Okay, so we've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the engineering of trust. We went from the basics of symmetric ciphers, focused on speed and that crucial shared secret.
Right, through the elegance of asymmetric systems like RSA and ECC, solving key exchange and enabling digital signatures, building that architecture of trust.
And landed squarely on the fact that it's the deployment, the engineering, the key management where things succeed or fail. PKI, HSMs, timestamping, avoiding weak randomness, ensuring forward secrecy.
It all comes back to meticulous engineering and operational practices.
Hmm.
The best mathematical algorithm in the world doesn't help you if you leave the private key lying around on an unsecured server or use a predictable random number generator.
The strength isn't in secret math, it's in robust, transparent, well-managed engineering of secrets.
Precisely.
Now, we talked about how DES became weak because its 56-bit key was just too short for modern computers to brute force. But you mentioned earlier, almost in passing, that there's one cryptographic concept that's considered perfect, unbreakable regardless of computing power.
Ah, yes. The one-time pad, or OTP. It's the holy grail, theoretically speaking.
Perfect secrecy. How does it achieve that?
It's actually incredibly simple in principle. You need a secret key, which is a sequence of truly random bits. And crucially, that key sequence must be at least as long as the message you want to send.
Okay, a random key as long as the message.
Then you simply XOR the plaintext message with the random key sequence to get the ciphertext. To decrypt, the receiver XORs the ciphertext with the exact same random key sequence.
Because the absolute critical rule.
You never, ever reuse any part of that key sequence. Ever. Each key bit is used exactly once. That's why it's a one-time pad.
And why is that perfectly secure?
Because the key is perfectly random, and as long as the message, the resulting ciphertext reveals absolutely no statistical information about the plaintext. Given a ciphertext created with a one-time pad, every single possible plaintext of the same length is an equally likely decryption. An attacker with infinite computing power still learns nothing about the original message beyond its length. It's mathematically proven perfect secrecy.
Okay, perfect secrecy. No reliance on factoring being hard or discrete logs being hard. Sounds amazing. So here's the final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. If the one-time pad is mathematically perfect and unbreakable by any computer, present or future, Why aren't we using it for everything? Why bother with all the complexities of RSA, ECC, key lengths, padding, and worrying about quantum computers breaking them when we have a perfect solution?
What are the real-world practical, maybe even economic or logistical engineering hurdles that stop us from just using the theoretically perfect one-time pad for all our secure communications today? Think about generating that key and, more importantly, distributing it.
Right. Distributing a key that's as long as all the data you ever want to send and doing it securely beforehand, that sounds like a challenge in itself.
A massive challenge. It brings us right back full circle to the engineering of key management, just on an almost unimaginable scale.
A perfect system hampered by real-world logistics. A fascinating place to leave it. Thank you for guiding us through that.
My pleasure. It's crucial stuff to understand.
Indeed it is. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep digging deeper.